think it's time we revise and revisit the ICAC sting procedures and kind of put some things together, particularly as I've been asked by a number of uh, people who watch this channel exactly what ICAC does, and if I'd go back and explain a few things. I did a video a couple weeks ago saying, what is ICAC? And a listener in Britain asked me for that. And so I'll start with a story that the 65 and over crowd would probably know, and somebody in the 40s and 50s perhaps, or somebody who likes late night TV, because in our generation, we watched a lot of the police dramas. The 1970s had tons of police dramas. You had Mannix and Ironsides and Kojak and Barnaby Jones and so many others. Rockford Files was on at 4. I used to watch that when I got home from school. But in those dramas, they were somewhat educational because we learned a little bit about what police and private eyes and other people did. And of course, they always skirted the law and stuff. But what was central to each of these cases is ironically what my friends in the intelligence community and others have been taught by the feds, which is the same feds who violate their own rules, by the way, that what you do is you um, get a tip, you develop leads for that or gather information, and then you begin an investigation. After you begin the investigation, you may or may not make an arrest. You may make a list of persons of interest or suspects, and you proceed from there. But that's not what I.C.A.C does. They say that in their lead documents, that the number one thing that they're supposed to do is rescue real children. So it begs the question, why do they spend so much time pimping fake ones? So it's difficult to arrest a fake child, but it's really easy to arrest a real person who's not looking for any child and label them a predator, a pedophile, or whatever, as police routinely do. I mentioned already in the December 2022 General Accountability Office report released at the behest of Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz and others, which was based predominantly not on empirical evidence, not on interviewing people who have been stung, not on looking at advocacy groups and getting their input. No, exclusively at talking to police officers, rank and file ICAC detectives, and asking what they did. And what was interesting is they referred to people who are in these stings and in these, their targets as sex offenders before they even have a chance to offend. I mean, if that isn't telegraphing your intent all along, I don't know what is. Particularly since when you look at the scientific data that comes out, you find out the 98 or 96, some 90 percentile of them, percent, do not have a history of sexual offense. They don't. In fact, Detective Bauer told me that when I complained about that. He said, "Oh, you'll find that a lot of times there's no prior convictions," which of course begs the question. Maybe what you would want to be is a little careful on these sites, particularly if you're on there trolling. Remember, their number one goal is to get real children saved. That would require, at a minimum, a tip. It would require marshaling some forces to do a preliminary investigation, interview people, but all that they skip because there is no child. So now that the game is up and what they're really doing is trolling, let's look at what they do for their trolling. So step one is they enter the fish barrel, let's say, right? In shooting fish in a barrel, right? That's the analogy. They're gonna get somebody. They're gonna get somebody because they're there to get somebody. You do understand that. They're going to get you because they're there to get you. All right? And this is where the deception and the gaslighting and the other stuff comes in. So step one is they create a fake profile of an adult on an adult site. Already they violated contract law. They violated the terms and conditions of the legal argument, of the legal uh, user agreement that these sites have. Now, I've had trolls say, that's not a real thing, contract law, and police can do that. And yes, they can under certain circumstances. They can't do it totally. Even if you allow that there's no law that prohibits them, is this what you want police doing? You want them first not investigating a lead, not looking for anybody who actually did anything, not having a tip, not having any probable cause at all. Just, we're going to kick in the door of the bank and start robbing it, or kick in your front door because maybe you're doing something. As Detective Bauer said, we're going to look at whether people were doing something to harm children. Sounds so innocent, but it's in how they do it, when they do it, why they do it, under what circumstances they do it. That's important. So first thing they do is they violate the terms of service. How do they violate the terms of service? Well, the terms of service say two things that are very important. Legitimate users cannot impersonate any real person. So you can't go on there and pretend to be somebody you're not. Okay, I'm not even sure it says real person. I think it says you can't impersonate. The second thing it specifically says is no government agents, no law enforcement can be on those sites pretending to be something that they're not. They're not allowed to play this game. And in their 2008 and 2012 and 2002 manuals, I believe it's 2002 as well, they expressly state that at the end of their operational guidelines, I guess they call it. I can't remember what they call it. Operational standards, pardon me. Not guidelines, which what just jumped out of my mouth because that's what, when I pinned one of the I.C.A.C officers down, that's what he said. Well, they're just guidelines. No, they're standards. A standard is different. A standard of conduct is the minimum conduct that you're supposed to take. And so the minimum conduct said, and you could all understand this, dating sites are a very sensitive area. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot of smack talk and posturing and posing and people just talking about shit, but that doesn't mean that they're interested in kids. So we are not going to go on adult dating sites just to troll. Right? It's different if they obviously have somebody on there who is being trafficked. They know that person. They've been following them. It's led to that site. And now they have a sting in progress where they're going to isolate that person. They're going to geolocate with warrants. And then they're going to go after the person and arrest them. That's different. I don't think anybody has a problem with that. The traffickers do, obviously. But that's not what they're doing. So already I'm on step one and you see all the problems. Step two, they deploy the decoy profile. Now we've got a problem already because in setting up the profile, they created an image of somebody. Either they used a geomorph, which they claim they do. A geomorph, as they have described it, the police have, is they might have this register, one's eyes, one's lips, the body of somebody else, the head of somebody else. But what we find more often that they do is they use a younger picture, a younger photo of an actual police officer today, because then they really don't have to get much permission to do that. Or they take a picture, some stock picture or something, and they use that. In any of those cases, it is not a real person in terms of a real user. And you could argue that person who's being deployed as 12-year-old Detective Smith is no longer a person because that person doesn't exist anymore. Nevertheless, they don't do that right away, though. They claim to be an adult. And they show you pictures that might be suspect, but at first they might show you nothing. Because again, they're claiming to be an adult. And they certainly don't want you figuring out the gig before they spring the trap. So after engaging you fraudulently, dishonestly, deceptively, and not part of an investigation. Remember, the police can use deception as part of an investigation. They're not investigating. There's no crime. What are they investigating? They're trolling. That's what proactive stings are. Simply throwing chum out there and encouraging people to violate the law. Okay? It's not even as good as the police officer sitting at the bottom of the hill because he knows somebody's going to speed. If the police officer sat at the bottom of the hill and started throwing tacks everywhere or obstacles in the road or pressing, had a drone or something, and as soon as you approached, the trajectory was that the drone crashed into your car and you got into an accident, hit the car in front of you, and he went, aha, and he wrote some tickets. That would be entrapment. There's no way the courts would allow that. Or kicking in every door, as I suggested, because that might also lead to an arrest. Maybe somebody's doing something inside, but there's that pesky Fourth Amendment, okay, in the way. But that's exactly what they're doing here. They're not coming on the site and sitting there on a blank profile, which again would violate the terms and conditions, right? But they're not even that good. They're not sitting there just waiting and watching. That's what they claim they're doing, which is waiting and watching. No, they're not, because it's come up in court over and over again that that's not what they're doing. Sworn officers who have been caught in stings or otherwise have resigned in protest have told us what they do. We have court documents that claim what they do, and worse yet, how they participate in the conversation. Sexually harassing, sexually enticing, sexually, talking smack, doing what other people on the site do at times. I had a conversation with somebody recently, and this individual said he was on Kick. And on Kick, which I've never been on, but I understand you can go into chat rooms. He went into a chat room at the urging of one of the characters, and he found there were other people in the chat room. And at one point early on, the moderator of the chat room asked him to verify. I guess you have to verify your identity or something. So he opened the camera or whatever and was unaware that his picture had been taken in a screenshot. They then came and arrested him. Okay, because they were talking about women. They were simply breast shots and talking about women. So he claims. Now, I've not seen it, but I have seen others that have worked very much like this. But here's the kicker, no pun intended for the kick folk. Why were they doing that to begin with? Why was the moderator a sworn police officer? Why? They lured this guy into a chat room, engaged him in ways they may or not, as far as we have concerned, try to suggest that somebody underage might be okay. This person said that I spoke to that wasn't true. But why would they do that? And who wouldn't think that was entrapment? Again, they're not sitting there waiting for something to happen. They're not arriving accidentally to see something happen. That's not what's happening. And then here's where they begin springing the trap. All of a sudden they say, oh, I'm just 15. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Okay. So you shouldn't have said that you're 15. Okay. And the person looks at it and says, wait a minute. All this time you've been role playing and saying you're an adult and you want to do all these kinky things and, naughty nurse or whatever the hell they might be talking about. And now all of a sudden you're 15. What are you doing? And see, this is where police go to court and say, we told him that he knew the age and he continued talking. Who wouldn't think that was deceptive? You see the age and you continue talking. That's outrageous. That's ridiculous. What were you talking about? That's the other thing. Were you talking about sexually charged things before you knew the age? Did you continue after when you might have been assured of the age? See, now you're in this gray area a little bit. Oh, trolls say, no, 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 you should immediately disengage. Okay, trolls, no sex talk until you learn the age. You say, I'm not interested, as I said, as many said, no sex talk in my case or others, and they come and arrest you anyway. Now, I did do one thing that others have done too. I went to see the person. Aha, you say, and police say, you went to see them. Yeah, and I said all along I wasn't there to have sex. I didn't go to see them to have sex. They said, what would you do if we got together? Well, this is after they said, I've got to run, I've got to hide. See, there's always more to the story that the police don't tell you. And because of the police, they are believed over and over again. And most of us know that, right? We know that police lie. We know sometimes that they win cases because they lie. Why do you think they wouldn't do it here? Especially when they've got you down. And then they make the arrest. Now, what if police did it the right way? What if they had a tip? There was a real child in danger. They went after that person trying to hurt the child and investigated and made an arrest. That's what they're supposed to do. But you may remember I did a video a while back that talked about what was going on in Washington State when the Washington State Patrol decided to make an unholy alliance with Operation Underground Railroad, OUR, and the head of that was a Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez. And Sergeant Rodriguez said, yeah, we're getting lots of tips, but you know what? This is juicy stuff. We're going to bump up our stats this way. He ignored the real children in danger. I repeat, he ignored the real children in danger and instead went after the fake, staged incidents where they could arrest people and destroy their lives. Never mind destroy their lives, didn't matter, so that they could bump up their stats and make it look like they were doing a bang up job. Again, fake children is very low on their priority list. Proactive stings are about third or so of a 5 or 6 tiered priority list, but that's only the official word. They're actually first. Okay. So again, hit me back here. Let me know what you think. These are just fine stings. You know, no problem that you have with it. They violate all sorts of constitutional laws, all kinds of principles, all kinds of statutes. But here's the funny thing, too, folks. If they're allowed to continue to get away with things, you'll notice that in many, many cases where police have been allowed in LA, in New York, and other places over in past years in the deep South, and they've been allowed to get away with it, they push the envelope more and more and more. And for those of you who think, I'm okay, doesn't matter if they get a few people, you're probably a pedophile anyway. They lured you in. You were suckered. Your fault. Well, guess what? When they start treading on your sacred ground, you've already made a permission structure for them to get away with it. And if you think you're so special and you're so clever, and some of you trolls do, oh, never happened to me. I never get practical jokes. I never get fooled. Think again. There are lots and lots of people smarter than all of us who've been out there and been hit and hit hard. And what they have to defend against is nearly impossible to win. That's why they keep doing it. They have a turnkey system that gets them a 98% kill ratio. And we all ought to be very concerned about that. Because, by the way, who's lost in this? Real kids who are really in danger. They're the ones that are not being met.